A Long Walk Home, which is a nonprofit here in Chicago that works to empower youth, specifically Black girls, to combat violence that they experience.
Hello, I'm Kwamena. I'm one of the space stewards, land stewards at the Breather Room, Space Gardens and Farms. Um, I am a freelancing farmer and chef in the community. Cook with a mutual aid, led by El Vejo and Getting Grown Collective, called Farm Foods and Familia. And I really just center my work around nourishing my ecosystem from the inside out and really connecting back to the earth. And yeah.
Peace, family. My name is Martinez Sutton. I'm the brother of Rikia Boyd. I'm currently a clinical mental health therapist, and I do trauma work on at one of the hospitals on the south side of Chicago.
We gonna share this mic because baby girl took my mic, and you know what? You deserve it. I'm Jay Rice, pronouns he, him. I am the director of communications at Brave Space Alliance. I am also the founder of Small World Collective, here founded in Chicago, and I am a general practitioner of freedom and joy.
Oh my goodness. Did you want to introduce yourself? Sorry.
That's all
She
right.
was talking to me and I put her on the spot. I'm sorry. Maybe a little later. So, thank you all for participating on this panel. To get us started, I'll ask a few questions and then I'll open it up to the audience to ask any questions that they may have. So, I think that it's really important that we have this conversation, and I really appreciate that it's titled Collective Wellness and Care. So, can you all talk about, especially in this um, world or neoliberal idea of self care. Can you talk about the ways that community and collective care resonate and are important in your individual work that you do? And anybody can answer that.
Okay. Well, the work I do with Brave Space Alliance, I mean, community care is the foundation of our organization. It is the lifeblood of everything that we do. We put community at the forefront. What I do with Small World Collective is also community based, right? We are uplifted constantly by community, and I think that I can get my own liberation through a community sense of liberation. So that's how it kind of shows up in my work.
One of the things that I do, well, especially at the hospital, most of the violent crimes you see on TV is what I deal with. So, advocating for the families, make sure the nurses and doctors are doing the right as soon as they come through the door. I'm in the trauma bay with them, seeing them while they getting helped, healed, and put back together. You know, um, one of the worst parts of the job is letting the families know that their loved one didn't make it. So I'm a counselor, a therapist there, a friend, a advocate. I do some of everything there to make sure that the patient have a full recovery. Um, Also, I'm currently interning, trying to get my LCPC license so I can start my own practice to provide free therapy to some of our organizations and to whoever need it out here.
Um, One of the ways it shows up in the work that I do is a lot of the things that manifest within our collective is because of collective imagination flowing. So like I like to hold space for that, especially like centering Black women's visions in our space on our land, and that especially this season has just like been such an affirmation, because my idea of like leadership used to be so like narrow, and that's like like just I still censor my vision. It's also like making space for the rest of of your tribe's visions as well, because like once that manifests, it creates this beautiful thing, and it's something that can be sustainable. And so like this season we had wanted a hoop house in our garden, and we were thinking of all kinds of way of doing that, whether it was like getting a grant or getting it donated. And what we ended up doing was like recreating, restructuring some old structures we had built back in 2019, and nobody really knew how to build a hoop house. We were just like, yeah, we're gonna put these structures together or whatever. But we just got out there, and we just got our thoughts like flowing, running, and the end result was just like this. It was so dreamy. It's like this is what we dreamed of. We talked about it for 2-3 years now, and then the fact that like it manifests itself and that we built it with our own hands, that made it all worth it. So I really am for that collective imagination.
I really like that collective imagination. Um, Other panelists, can you all speak to, in the line of this collective imagination, based on the work that you do with community, based on what you see, what are like your wildest dreams as it relates to care and wellness for the populations in which you work with?
My wildest dream is to see like self care just being introduced into our communities. Um, that's one of the greatest things that I see is lacking. We're talking to some of the patients. It's just not around. Like when you talk about self care, they don't even know what it is. You know, and even when explaining what self care is, it's like I don't even have the time to provide self care to myself because I'm still in fear of getting killed or getting hurt out here. So it's like you have people that want to practice self care, but their mentality won't allow them to even attempt it due out of fear of being off their grind. So I would love to see just self care ideas being introduced into several of our communities, so that the community will have a chance to continue to prosper.
I want to kind of just piggyback off what you said. Self care for the communities that we serve is also a dream of mine, and kind of taking this holistic approach to healing and holistic approach to thriving. The communities that we serve are predominantly black trans women, and there is this collective idea that black trans women, black queer folks, black gender nonconforming folks are okay with these crumbs that we're getting. And not only that we are okay with it, but we're okay with the crumbs, and we're okay with you calling it cake as well. So I want to get to that point where when we're talking about the sustainability of black trans women specifically, because I mean, when the average age is 25, that's not sustainable for me. That's not something that can allow our communities to thrive. I'm thinking a holistic approach to thriving versus this, here's these crumbs for you all to survive. Here's these $50 gift cards one time out of the week for you to do whatever you need to do. No, I'm here to have that holistic approach to healing for the black trans community in a way that's going to uplift them without just giving them the bare minimum.
Yeah, I also want to piggyback because when you said holistic, like, yes, I want to get from my dream is to see us get from out of that survival mode to the thrive mode. And so that for me, that looks like that healing is a everyday thing, and that it's not something that's a taboo or that's something that we have to like struggle to get into. Because I guess in my 20s, it felt like I had to like force myself into healing, and now that I'm getting into a place of like this can be an everyday thing, like I like being more aware of my traumas and my community's traumas, and like transmuting that energy and getting it through that, us doing that work now is going to make it easier for Arianka in the long run. And so that's what really motivates me, is that um, um, folks like ask me like what my career is going to be, what my next job is going to be. Like, this is my job, like getting myself together, healing myself in the community. This is the work, and I think it will just really pay off in the future.
So one thing I want us to kind of discuss or have a conversation around. In the film, and also Friday during the viewing, Bella spoke about this dichotomy of joy and pain, specifically to her experiences. Can you speak to how you take care in this dichotomy of joy and pain?
Don't look at me. A lot of weed. I would like 4 times a day. But no, for real. How do I take care? I find care in whatever the hell is gonna make me happy. So if that's a blunt at the moment, if that is being around community in a very intentional way, I like to always point out that like the revolution can also be found on the dance floor. It could be found, it can be found in places that aren't necessarily designated for the revolution, right? That's where a lot of my joy comes from, in that non-conventional healing spaces. So, it's at the parties we throw, but it's also at work. I find a lot of healing with that, but, after a blunt. So that's where we're at with that. But, yeah, also a lot of intentional conversations. Having those hard conversations I have been finding have been very healing for me lately. So, yeah.
I have to say, I have to write it out, sing it out, holler it out, sing it out again, write it some more, you know. And that's like when somebody's not available to talk to. Like, I'm a social being. So as you can imagine, last year been very hard for me. You know, so I may be quiet, but then again, when I'm around people, that energy, that joy that they bring, that togetherness, like I love that. That energizes me. That bring me up out of this run that I may currently be in. Because to be real with y'all, to share something with y'all, I haven't been right since my sister passed, because that was a part of me that also passed. They expect you to be whole again, but you can't be whole if pieces are missing. And that piece been missing for 9 years now. So it's like trying to find those replacement parts. It's hard. It's just like a foreign car. It's not over here. We're going to have to get it shipped. So I'm still waiting for that package to arrive. But since then, I've been putting pieces together so that I can continue to drive and move on and continue to work, and move forward. So when I find myself stopping, it's because every time, you need a break, you gotta regas up. And so once I gas up again, I just move forward. So like writing, that social being, just talking, just having that conversation. Because when I don't have it, I withdraw a little bit. And I may just disappear, and then those seconds turn to minutes, and those minutes turn to hours, and those hours, of course, turn to days, and then those days, you get it. So yeah, somehow we gotta let it out, because the mind, of course, is like a pot with a lid on it, a boiling pot. If you don't let it out, eventually you'll explode. So just being creative. I have a lot of memoirs and voice recordings that I do also.
It was so poetic.
Much love. So yeah, that's definitely what it is.
Well, I feel like this has been the theme for my life for the past, like, at least a year and a half now. And a thing that I center myself with is like following my bliss. And so, like, if it isn't like a resounding yes, like I do my best to confidently say no to it. And sometimes that looks like me not being in community. And so, like, just background, I live on in a communal living situation right next to breathing room. So it's like I see community every day. unless I schedule in that time for me. Like I have little airlocks, like recharge pods that I get out into nature, where I can just like ground myself, and literally like recharge, so that I can show up as my best self when I do get back into community. Because I found when I first, like, so activism is like relatively new to me, especially in the way that Chicago embodies it. Because I'm from the South, I'm from Texas, and maybe I just was in alignment with it while I was there, but like, you know, folks in the streets, like letting them know what it is was not a thing for me. And so when I got here, I immersed myself in it because it's like I definitely like romanticized like fighting for my freedom until I got here and seeing that like there's actual work to be done. And I just threw myself into it and just like found myself drained often and couldn't really understand it because it's like I'm fighting for my freedom, right? Like I'm supposed to be feeling freer, right? Like and I had to find that balance. So that looks like me scheduling in my off time instead of me like scheduling hours for work or like office hours at the space. And this is like a new practice for me, right? Like I'm still struggling through it now. Like even in the past few weeks with like there's a lot of things that have been going on, especially this past weekend. It's like I immediately want to throw myself into work mode or like grind mode, and having to be tender with myself is like I don't have to do the most all the time. I deserve to have some space to myself to recharge, to recenter, so that I can come back to community and fill it up. Like fill my cup up, let it overflow. It's gonna pour into whoever's cup is around me that needs some filling up. So yeah, like I said, it's a relatively new practice for me, and I'm still struggling through it, But I'm seeing a difference in my mental health, and especially like having a mirror, like a perfect mirror to like reparent myself to heal like my inner child. It's really been transformational for me, and I want to be able to share that with the community as well. So um, I'm gonna keep working with that, and hopefully just like set an example for how we should be moving to keep ourselves energized in this movement.
Absolutely. I have more questions, but I want to allow the audience to chime in with comments or questions that they have. And I don't think we have a mic, so you just have to speak a little loud. Go ahead. You and I'm sorry, you in there, and then I'll come here in the front. Okay. Yep.
I was just about to say everyone at Brave Space is with the shits. I'm gonna go ahead. We with it. I would say, especially after this past year, I kind of got those people out my circle. I didn't really have room for folks who weren't showing up the way I was showing up. This is life and death for us. There's folks getting lynched in the streets. There's trans women getting beheaded. If you're not as upset and angry as I am about it, then it's not really a lot of room for us to have any sort of relationship, unfortunately.
I feel like, even babies got to learn how to walk and talk when they come into a different environment. I say that because, at the hospital I'm at, right? I have a conversation with this older white guy almost every other day. And he always asks me, why does certain violence happen in the community, or why are all these shootings happening, or you know, he he questions me, right? And I give him answers. Like I probably stand there with him for about 30 to 45 minutes, and we just go back and forth. We talk about our generational differences. We talk about our environments, which I'm really strong on environments because I believe that our environment is what make us, whether community, neighborhood, home, work environments. It just all breaks down into many different pieces, right? What I respect about this guy is that he don't just think like, um, well, he just don't go with his own thoughts all the time, but he opens up and asks. Now, you can tell he don't deal with black people much. You can tell that he's never stepped foot inside that environment. But what I respect about this guy is that he's willing to learn. Now, if you're not willing to learn, that's what I got a problem with. Because you steady going off your own opinion, which you may believe is your fact, so everybody have opinionated facts. So I feel like if you in my circle and you don't know what's going on, or you act like you don't know what's going on, as long as you try to know what's going on and try to understand, then I rock with you. But if you don't and just want to feed off your own ignorance, then you got to be pushed away. Every day is a learning experience. I know for a fact that I try to learn because I don't know everything. Even if I know something, I sit as if I don't know anything at all. Because everybody up in here got different views about a certain one situation. I could throw out a question and it'll be however many people in here, everybody have a different answer. So as long as you have the dignity to find out what's going on and open up your mental and open up your heart, yeah, I definitely rock with you. If not, then keep it moving.
I admire your patience, brother. I ain't got it.
Yeah.
They be tested. Like
I'll bet.
they be, my patience is tested, But then, just sitting back listening, I learn a lot from it. It could be a lot of times I'm like, yo, listen, and just sit it out there. But, some folks, they learn a lot slower than others. So it's just like going back to preschool for some, where some are already ready for high school, So, and that itself just teach me, how to be patient and humble.
My participation at Freedom Square really shifted my like how who I roll with, right? Like, cause I was at my dream job at the time at a restaurant in the Fulton Market district, and I was just like clashing with folks left and right because it was like they was buying veggies from Cook County Jail, and I was like, y'all bogus, and like, and it was like wasn't this my dream? Like, didn't I want to be working in these types of, and so like, ultimately I ended up getting out of the restaurant industry, right, and really rocking with Let Us Breathe, and even my participation there now that it's shifted from just like being a space steward, I actually live in community with a partner org, Sukasa, which is like they're literally attached to our building. But they're kind of separated, and it's very like reflective of like our ideals, our values, and there's some parallels for sure. But we're literally dealing with having restorative justice processes around like cops being called to the campus, right? So that has been very like, one, transformational, and two, just like how we hold community accountable to like, like that we're trying to shift and heal our world. Like we want to see a different world, and we want that for everybody, right? And so like, I think it is like a learning process, and I think like I'm putting a lot of faith in restorative justice because it does give that space for repair. So if some boundaries are crossed within community, we're able to address it in a way where everybody's thoughts are heard. Everybody can be seen. And most of the time that involves like a very deep healing process because everybody's experience with carceral systems is way different. And so like a lot of people would shy away from those types of spaces, right? They would go to their own little circles, right? But I really I have a lot of faith in um, us strengthening ourselves through our differences, right? Like just kind of like modeling after nature. Like they don't separate themselves per se to if they don't have like similar characteristics, like they fortify themselves, like they grow within each other. And I really do think like a lot of solutions to our issues today are intersections of people's different perspectives and experiences. So it was a balance. It's like, yeah, I had to get out of the restaurant industry, and that put me more in alignment with like folks that are more about this abolitionist framework. And still, we have some work to do within our own circles, right? So, I ain't gonna lie, I be wanting to run away and play the escapism game, but and sometimes whenever it does work out, when we do find those solutions, because it isn't gonna be done in like a day or a month or like five. It's just like continuous work we have to be doing. But like I said, like even with this season, like just seeing certain things manifest that we were like hype dreaming about 2-3 years ago makes it very worth it to stick with it and try to like make space for like those different ideas and looking for the intersections in them.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Did you? You didn't? Okay, right here.
So as long as black women, black femmes, queer, trans folks exist in this country, will there ever be a possibility for safety to exist for us? And will there also be a possibility where surveillance isn't used as a mechanism for violence?
Why y'all keep looking at me?
Wow. Oh wow.
Damn.
We might get rich.
So currently, my views around safe spaces are that they really don't exist for people like me.
Okay.
They do not exist for black, trans, black and brown and indigenous, queer, trans, non-binary folks. And that's why we use the language brave spaces at Brave Space Alliance, because it is hard for you to say, whether it's a party, whatever it may be, how can you promise my safety? Have you done some sort of checklist with every person that's going to come into this space? Have you done a personal community agreement with every person that's going to come into this space? If it's a party atmosphere, have you talked to security? Have you talked to the bartenders? Have you talked to the patrons? On their ticket, do you say, hey, no isms allowed? So like what lengths are you going to guarantee my safety? That does not exist for me. So I can say that I can show up as intentional as possible. I think intentional spaces can exist for folks that look like me and folks on this panel. Intentional spaces are what's going to liberate us. But safety, that's just such a hard word to put onto someone, and to expect the curation of an environment to always have my safety in mind. I would be doing myself a disservice, and I'd be doing my community a disservice by labeling spaces safe. So no, I guess to answer your question, I don't think that we can have a safe environment for folks, but I do think that it can be intentional.
One of the things One of the things that we're working through in the collective is like, right, we are changing that language around safety. Like, we don't have safety protocols. We have what we call wellness and protection, right? And so I believe we can have something like safety, right? And like with wellness and protection, that it isn't just like how like safety protocols, like how we're going to secure the garden or the space from getting things stolen. It's like, how are we taking care of ourselves so that we can secure, like keep our space protected, and keep creating these brave spaces for folks in the community. You got something to say? And so, like I've been saying, like I have a lot of faith in the processes that we're working through within our collective, and they are very challenging. But I think that, like, part of manifesting that vision is us talking about it, sitting here talking about it, and then like putting it into practice. And so, like, the wellness and protection at our collective is one way that we put this idea of like how are we creating safe spaces or brave spaces? How are we creating that? What does that look like for us? Because if it's ran by the state, we already know they don't work for us. So we have to do that within our communities, and that looks like a lot, very very deep relationship building, right? Because it's like we're asking people what they need to feel protected, what they need to feel safe. Is that takes them getting into their traumas and then like the pain and like a whole bunch of things. That at least from my experience, and when I say like this is legit what we're working through right now in our collective, just like community coming in and violating space, but then like trying to figure out how to keep people that invest in the land safe, but also like how can we create safe space for that person to come in and not violate, right? Because it's like they come in and there's a need, and that's why they do come in and cross their boundaries. I do think it has a lot to do with like getting past like talking about it and like actually putting it into practice and crafting new language, doing things outside of the box.
I just, well, I'll keep it short and sweet. I believe it can happen. I believe it will happen. It's just when is it gonna happen? And I just feel like, the greatest thing is starting with awareness. That's definitely lighting up a flame. But I believe mostly it's about changing the mind's mind before it become a mind. Changing the mind's mind before it become a mind. Because once it do, that's when everything goes away.
Yeah, I agree. I just would say I think every day I wake up, we're getting closer to that liberatory space and world in which we want to exist. And also, I think sometimes it's saying, I got it wrong, and I'm willing to get it right. And leaning into the collective rather than turning away from the collective when you get it wrong, I think will get us there.
Well, thank you all so much for being here and engaging us in this dynamic conversation. Again, my name is Morgan Elise Johnson. Thank you so much for watching Unapologetic. We have some merch outside for you. Definitely get your Unapologetic merch. And tell people to come see the film. It's going to be showing until September 2nd. This film would not be, I would be remiss if I didn't say the name of Rakia Boyd. So Rakia Boyd. Rakia Boyd. Rakia Boyd. Say her name.